Let's see. Weird Texas folk. I can't even speak, bro. Weird Texas folklore, brother. I live in Texas, so for my Texas people, shout out Texas, Houston.
Howdy doody, folks, and welcome back.
I mean, like, bro, like we don't all speak like that. Maybe we do. Maybe it's just the accent.
States where every state has a story, and Texas, you might just have some of the weirdest stories in the whole USA. Right in this, I just heard about everything from a possible wall built by biblical giants to UFOs that were shutting your cars off. And it seems that between these things, some spooky...
I've never heard of that. No, what?
With y'all, and clearly...
Bro, where did my mouse go?
Now, before we jump into the story, I have a quick favor to ask. If you enjoy these deep dives into America's strangest tales, dropping a comment and a like, and hitting that subscribe button like it just tried to lower Houston's speed limit again would help me out more than anything else as I struggle moving up this hill towards 100,000 subs in 2025.
Keep dissing on Houston, bro.
This will never cost you a dime, and it's a quick way to say, hey YouTube, this guy's alright. Anyways, with that, let's get into Texas's weird lore.
Let's go. Come on. Stop making me wait, bruh. Let's go. If you have a story, walls built by giants.
If you've ever found yourself in Rockwall, Texas, a small town just east of Dallas, you may have driven over one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in the Lone Star State and never even realized it.
Really?
You see, Rockwall didn't get its name because someone thought it sounded cool. No, this town is named after a literal wall, or more accurately, what appears to be an enormous underground system of stone walls, stretching for miles beneath the city and beyond. We'll get to what these actually are, but these aren't just any walls. Imagine digging a hole in your backyard, and hitting a solid wall made of sandstone bricks, fitted together like a medieval fortress. The walls can be seen several meters high, up to a half-meter thick, and seem to run randomly in all directions in a region covering about 50 square kilometers.
I mean,
who built them.
To debunk this though, isn't this just like natural formations of the earth? Like, I mean, I'm not like I believe in supernatural shit, but
in civilization predating the
giants,
or maybe a race of ancient giants, or if you prefer your mysteries with a sci-fi twist, maybe it was aliens.
I don't know how much I believe this one, but
legends. The first whispers of this wall go all the way back to 1851, when a man named T.U. Wade was digging a well and suddenly unearthed a strange, perfectly jointed sandstone wall. People naturally assumed this must have been the work of some prehistoric civilization, and soon the town itself was named Rockwall in honor of this mysterious find. And as if ancient walls weren't enough, rumors of giant skeletons started making their way into local lore. A newspaper article,
oh no, that's crazy,
tells the story of Ben Burton, who supposedly plowed up a gigantic skull described as fully as large as a half bushel, with eye sockets as large as half-gallon cups. One of its teeth was supposedly about an inch thick by 2 inches long. The article confidently declared, "This goes to prove that this county was once inhabited by a race of people that would be wonderful to look at now." Now, it is worth noting, nobody ever produced this skull, but that didn't stop people from speculating. Some said there was even a palace buried underground by these giants. And once a story like that takes root, good luck ever digging it out.
Yeah.
Fully intended. Now, just when the people of Rockwall thought they had seen it all, June of 1886 brought what might be the most outrageous chapter in the story of the mysterious Rockwall, one that began with the aforementioned discovery of a so-called gigantic petrified skull and quickly spiraled into the stuff of legends. According to an article published that year, after J.B. Burton uncovered a gigantic petrified skull, excitement swept the town. A crowd of curious townsfolk gathered, armed with picks and shovels and axes, ready to dig for more hidden wonders. Among them was W.R. Greer, who, while pounding the ground with a sledgehammer, reportedly heard the distinct ring of metal coming from beneath the earth.
What?
Now this wasn't just a rock anymore. The hunt was on. What they uncovered would defy belief. A chamber measuring 60 by 100 feet, with a slate ceiling 40 feet high, supported by gleaming black marble pillars. Inside this cavernous room stood an iron chest, so massive and heavy that no one could budge it, as well as a 25-foot long iron bed.
Bro, they're finding Minecraft loot In real life. Nah, that's insane, bro.
Sandals 3 feet long and 10 inches wide.
Sandals.
An absolutely ridiculous 12-foot-long battle axe weighing 75 pounds. If that wasn't enough to raise eyebrows, this so-called palace was located mere yards from the famous rock wall, prompting many to declare that the ancient Goliath who lived here must have built the wall to enclose his vast estate.
That's
yes,
crazy.
That's right. People in 1886 were openly theorizing that Rockwall, Texas, had once been home to actual giants. But the story didn't end here. 1 week later, on June 11th of 1886, the same newspaper published an even more elaborate and spine-chilling follow-up. In this account, Sam Slick, the correspondent, joined the next exploration party, which included familiar names like J.B. Steger, J.B. Greer, Jess Handley, Tom Bratcher, J.B. Burton, and Dr. Wiggins. As they ventured deep into this supposed underground world, they discovered an enormous iron door, rusted and heavy, which they pried open with crowbars and sledgehammers. And what they claimed to find beyond that door is straight out of a Lovecraftian fever dream.
Nah, that's crazy.
An iron kettle large enough to hold 1,000 gallons hung ominously near the floor, with a giant fork leaning against it. Think hay fork, but massive. But what really shook the explorers was what was inside of the kettle. A pile of bones and grinning skulls, which Dr. Wiggins prodded with his cane, causing one skull to collapse into dust. The conclusion? This ancient Goliath had apparently been a cannibal, cooking up his victims in Texas's biggest soup pot.
What?
As if cannibals weren't enough, the explorers then found an iron trapdoor in the middle of the room. Gathering their courage, and probably wishing they hadn't, they pried it open, only to be attacked by a monstrous bird-like creature described as having glowing eyes and a human-like scream, which repeatedly shrieked, "Get out of here! Get out of here!" before flying madly around the cavern. Was it a giant raven, a massive bat, a demon from the underworld? The terrified men fled for their lives, scrambling.
Get out of here!
Nah, Steger, Greer, and Bratcher fainted on the spot, and even Dr. Wiggins, the physician of the group, was too unnerved to help until cold water was splashed in their faces. Tom Bratcher later confessed he might have held it together if only they hadn't smelled something like yarn socks. Whatever it was, it reeked.
Yarn
now,
socks?
With this story in mind, let's fast forward to 1924.
Bro, this guy looked like an actor, bro.
Ready to throw
Tell me if I'm wrong.
Already roaring fire. His name was Count Byron Kun de Prorock, a Hungarian-American adventurer who was basically the 1920s version of the Ancient Aliens host. Now, the Count, as he loved to be called, wasn't just any quack. He had some actual archaeology training from the University of Geneva.
So he's verified.
In academia, he turned into a full-blown showman, traveling with cameramen, wearing a pith helmet, and writing books with titles like In Quest of Lost Worlds and Digging for Lost African Gods. When de Prorock visited Rockwall, he took one look at all those stones and announced, with great flair, that they were definitely the work of ancient people. According to the Dallas Morning News, the Count shook his head dubiously over the pronouncements of the geologists and said, "I have seen rocks like these in the East, and they didn't prove to be natural formations." That was that. Newspapers around the country picked up the story, and soon the Count's declaration was cited as definitive proof that the Rockwall walls were built by some forgotten race. Even today, the Rockwall County Historical Foundation's website still mentions that Count de Prorock believed the walls were man-made. But let's pump the brakes on the ancient giants theory.
So they can't do no like DNA or anything like on the walls? Like, bro, like if I leave my fingerprint right here, FBI's can go ahead and swoop that shit up. Like,
talk about what
we can't do that.
Incredible scientists have to say. The first expert to examine these walls was Richard Burleson, an assistant state geologist for Texas, way back in 1874. I feel like he was in a different world than the other people in these tales. He didn't see a giant palace. He saw what geologists would call dikes.
That's what I'm saying.
Natural formations created when molten rock, see magma, squeezes into fractures and hardens.
See?
Over time, these dikes
natural.
cracked both vertically and horizontally, giving the illusion of stacked blocks. Then in 1901, Robert T. Hill from the U.S. Geological Survey said, "Hold my logic beer," and added that these were probably clastic dikes, that is, sediment, not magma, filling cracks and later hardening into sandstone. By 1909, another geologist, Sidney Page, agreed, writing in Science magazine.
That's what I'm saying, bro.
Page explained that the cracks between the blocks lined up too perfectly to have been built by hand. To read a direct quote from him, many of the vertical joints occur above each other, i.e., they are not broken, which condition would not exist in a wall constructed by hand. He also pointed out that what people were calling mortar between the stones was just naturally weathered sandstone, stained with iron oxide.
See, bro.
And if all this isn't enough to convince you that what we've just discussed isn't actually the work of giants, science came back swinging in 2013 when the show America Unearthed, basically Ancient Aliens' cousin, decided to investigate Rockwall for their episode The Great Wall of Texas. Host Scott Walter brought in Dr.
It's
John
just some
Geisman,
stones,
a
bro.
geoscientist from the University of Texas and vice president of the Geological Society of America, and Geisman used paleomagnetism to test the walls. Here's how that works. When rocks form, their magnetic particles align with Earth's magnetic field. If humans later moved them around, say to stack into walls, those alignments would be all over the place. But if the magnetic field is consistent across all blocks, it's naturally formed. So what did they find? You guessed it.
Naturally
Perfectly
formed.
aligned with the Earth's magnetic field. This signifies that the walls were very likely never moved by human hands, or I guess perhaps giant hands. They are
Okay, so if that's true, how did they find all that like stuff that they said, like a chest, a battle axe, the loot? Here's the thing. Alright, here's my theory. They just said, hey boys, we ain't find shit. But to make it interesting and to make it a tourist spot, because you know, like come on, bro. They the more a town had of people, population, the more economical their town was, right? The more money everybody gets. So it was only natural to make it like a little tourist spot,
a
bro.
formation seen all over the world. So with all of this in mind, what's the deal with the wall today? Well, if you visit the Rockwall County Historical Museum, you can see a reconstructed section of the wall taken from an actual excavation. It's made of those big, chunky sandstone blocks that make people scratch their heads and think, well, maybe it might be giants. To their credit, the museum acknowledges the geological explanation, but they also leave room for the mystery, because let's be honest, it's a heck of a fun story, and the kind of thing I fully would have latched onto as a kid. So that's the truth about Rockwall's Great Wall. It's an amazing natural formation, sure.
That's cool, though.
A window into how legends are born.
Check that out.
A natural wall that got mistaken for a...
Should we go there? Chat. Okay, but should we go there one day? Maybe one day.
Joined by embellished tales of fake giant skulls that probably never existed. Not
That's
to
what
mention,
I'm saying, bro.
fantastical tales of the saga were told by Sam Slick, who was previously a well-known fictional character that was invented by Canadian author and judge Thomas Chandler Halliburton 50 years before. Sam Slick of Slicksville, who was well known at the time to write satirical commentaries that essentially insulted rural Nova Scotia residents. Also, man, the fun tales by the showboating count who turned into international news were also a doozy. All in all, falsehoods aside, I had a blast with this story. I love a good mystery, and I love when the mystery has a good legend attached. And the whipped cream on top is that it all leads us back to an amazing lesson in science. Good stuff in my book.
True, but yeah. Oh, the lost wagon train. Okay, this is something paranormal. I love paranormal shit. So we talking paranormal shit here, maybe. Let's go. Let's go, bro. Hey, if you ain't got your snacks, you ain't got your whatever you like, Takis, hot chips. Maybe it's not hot chips. Anything. Go ahead and get it, bruh.
Of West Texas, where the flat plains suddenly give way to waves of wind-sculpted dunes, lie the Monahans Sandhills. A vast sea of pale, shifting sands that has been whispered through time.
This is not in Texas, brother. Come on, bro.
These dunes, rising as high as 70 feet, seem frozen in place at first glance, but under the relentless push of wind, they are always moving, always reshaping the land in subtle ways. Long before highways carved through the desert and oil rigs pierced the earth, these sands were the ancestral hunting grounds of the Comanche. They were a people of the plains, fierce and free, and the sandhills provided them more than shelter. They were a vital part of the Comanche's domain. Here, horses could be rested and hidden, and warriors could survey the surrounding lands from the tallest dunes. Water, which was rare in the surrounding desert, could also sometimes be found in hidden springs beneath the sands, known only to those who understood the land's secrets. The sandhills were also a natural barrier and a meeting ground, a place to prepare for raids or escape pursuit, their ever-changing shape confusing enemies unfamiliar with the terrain. As the sun set, casting long shadows across the dunes, fires might have been burned in secret camps, and the stories of the Comanche, of battles, hunts, and spirits of the land would have mixed with the sounds of wind moving through the sands. It was this exact purpose, refuge, that the Comanche people used these sandhills for in their struggles against the Buffalo Soldiers in the mid-19th century.
Dude, the fact that, like, humans used to do this shit, and now we just complain to fucking wake up. And we complain about other shit is crazy. But humans were really out here doing this, bro. That's crazy. I don't know what I'm saying, bro.
By the tales, this story is said to begin around 1918, when a wagon train would start on its way from Fort Worth, Texas to El Paso, with a handful of families. They were hoping to follow a...
Oh, isn't this, Zydeco? But that's like New Orleans. But this... Oh, bro. Maybe this is like a disappearance story.
El Paso region, notable among these.
By the way, it says 1912 reenactment of wagon train.
Was a woman who was related to the then editor of the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, and she had a blue cloth given to her by her mother.
By the way, nobody's gonna watch this and watch me messing that up, so I'm not even worried about messing up. Honestly, I don't even really care about messing up, because nobody's gonna watch this shit.
Which her mother wanted.
But if you are, I love you, bro.
That lived in El Paso. Her mother planned to make a
drop a
dress
like
from the cloth
and comment, bro.
Wanted the cloth to offer them some sort of connection, I suppose. It was very sweet. Also, it's worth noting, some say this wagon train was full of gold and silver, a detail that continues to perplex individuals to this day. One day, this wagon train would go on its way, and that was that. Sadly, after leaving, this wagon train, nor the people on it,
did it disappear,
would ever
bro?
be seen again,
What?
Lost somewhere in the prairies.
Oh,
that's go to be clear. There were
okay. I'm gonna move my
search efforts after its disappearance and into the 1920s, looking along the prairies of the region, but none of them yielded a single clue as to where this wagon train went, and it was eventually forgotten. Well, until it wasn't.
What?
In the 1930s, it said that a rancher living in the Monahans was searching for his cattle as they would wander into the sandhills. And as he did this, he was walking up one of these sandhills for a better vantage point when his foot would hit something hard. He looked down, and he would be flabbergasted to see that he'd gained solid footing by stepping upon the partially uncovered remains of a wagon wheel.
What?
He kept searching here, and he would find more traces of this wagon, some of which were clearly burnt, and also he found arrowheads. He surmised whoever this had been was attacked by the Comanches. Also, of course, there were tons of valuable items, including a trunk, which caught his eye, and he decided to bring this item back to town. Now, in town, and in front of many others, he would open this trunk, and inside they would find various things of value, but most notably, he would find something we've talked about already, a bolt of blue cloth. Of course, this sudden hint that there might be more riches in the sandhills was too enticing for any local to pass up, and folks would descend upon the hills to search the wreckage of this wagon before the winds shifted the dunes, hiding the wagon again. Folks would find everything.
The fact that, like I'm just saying, like there's probably still remains in that whatever desert. I didn't even know we had a desert. The hell?
And they would
we have a
their way
desert?
back to town with their riches.
Shoot, I only really be in Houston, I'm not gonna lie.
Would once again be concealed in the shifting
and
dunes.
San Antonio.
Regardless, word spread of this find, and eventually, given his role in the diffusion of information, an old editor from the Fort Worth Star-Telegram would hear of this story, and he would immediately realize this could have been the wagon train in which his long-lost relative had been on. He'd
that's crazy.
These details and would realize a blue bolt of cloth was also discovered amongst the wreckage. And as it turns out, the mother of the woman she bequeathed this cloth to didn't end up making that blue dress after her daughter had disappeared, instead keeping the cloth in her memory. She'd get a hold of the fragment that was found of the blue cloth, and she would check to see if the two pieces matched up. Of course, when they were brought together, they were shown to align perfectly. Suddenly, the legend of the lost wagon train had been solved. Well, at least sort of. As we said, the wagon train, though briefly uncovered, was once again swallowed by the dunes. And if you believe this story, it still waits for possible individuals there, hoping to be uncovered once again. So that's the story. Now it's time to ask the question of whether there is truth to it. Well, to start, we should acknowledge that there
I believe this one. I'm not gonna lie, I believe this one.
trains that did pass along this route, and their disappearance was not exactly rare. Passing from east to west Texas was hazardous. Additionally, shifting sand dunes in the area near the Monahans are well known to conceal historical artifacts, so this detail is true.
I believe
That
that.
being said, there are no historical records of this exact wagon train disappearing. At least
I mean, like, bro, it was like in the 1850s, bro. No shit. No shit, there's no records, bro. What the
mention
fuck?
was a
Like,
wagon train in newspapers mentioning wagons passing between Fort Worth and El Paso. Also, it's worth mentioning, in 1918, my impression is that the Comanche people and settlers of the region were largely at peace with one another. Sure, in the late 1800s, fighting between these groups was common, but by this point, I do think it was over. So in short, reading this story, I have to wonder if this story is a dramatization or perhaps a mixture of tales of lost wagon trains across Texas history.
maybe Lost
Regardless,
Tales.
it would not surprise me if there were remains of a lost wagon out there in the dunes that were full of valuable artifacts, gold and silver, just waiting to be found. As always, I'd love to hear more about this tale or hear your opinion.
Dude,
on
it's still crazy to me that there's fucking sand, like deserts.
the legend if you'd like to give them to me in the comments below.
Where the fuck is that at? Black Eye. Oh shit, we getting into it, bro. We getting into it, bro. Come on, bro. Bring it on, bro. We got some paranormal shit. Let's go. Ah, shit.
Before in a live stream.
Oh, hell nah.
Stories of the black-eyed children are, without a doubt, the scariest cryptids to me.
That's what I'm
If you're
saying.
not
That's
familiar with
crazy.
them, these beings appear to be children, but their skin looks lifeless, almost dead, and their eyes typically expected to be warm, with life, like blue,
But-
green, or brown.
Where is this spotted at?
They look like children, but when you get a closer look, you realize they're not. This combination of childlike
Okay, bruh.
innocence with unsettling
Really?
inhuman features creates a strange reaction. When they ask for help, you feel the urge to assist, but deep down, you know you shouldn't. Your natural instinct to help a child.
Bro,
end up being
imagine-
dangerous.
Imagine seeing this, like you just driving down. I'm trying to think of a good highway. Any of these highways in Texas, like if you know, you know, right? If you from Texas, you know these highways are damn long, and sometimes it could be like miles between cities and shit. And over here, I'm like in Southeast Texas, so it's like swamps and shit. So if you see this, bro, if you see this, I'm not gonna lie, that'd be crazy. That'd be
But you
crazy.
probably still will, and they know that. The reason I'm talking about this is because the legends of the black-eyed children actually come from Texas, specifically Abilene, where
Abilene.
some of the creepiest
Where's that
stories
at,
I've
bro?
ever read online originate. As far as the origin of these stories is concerned, it's sort of disputed, but in large part, it's accepted that a man named Brian Bethel, a Texas reporter, is the first to write about these
Okay.
creatures. In 1998, he
Abilene.
would first write about them on
1998.
what I see referred to as a ghost-related mailing list, alleging encounters with these creatures in Abilene, but also in Portland, Oregon. And admittedly, while this ghost-related mailing list was sort of fostered to share quote-unquote true stories, this one reads a bit more like a creepypasta. That being said, the
Abilene.
legend gained popularity, and others shared similar experiences as if they
HEB.
were true.
Shout out
Now,
HEB,
many
bro.
honestly believe that these black-eyed children exist, just like Sasquatch, extraterrestrial visitation,
crazy.
and ghosts.
Yeah, I've heard
So,
stories.
you know,
I've heard stories of these, but I've never like realized where they originated from. But the fact that it's in Texas, bro, that just makes it like 10 times cooler, bro.
Now on to this first encounter, that of the original man himself,
This dude.
Brian Bethel. Brian's encounter with these kids,
Creepy-eyed
supposedly the
kid,
first
bro.
ever encounter
I
with
slapped the
them,
hell
was
out
in
of this
Abilene,
kid,
as
bro.
I
I
said.
swear to God.
One evening, he was sitting in his car, presumably near a movie theater in town, and he would
Okay.
notice two children that he estimated to be of ages 9 and 12 walking towards the car. They were both
What?
wearing black hoodies and walked right up to his car. At
Oh,
this
that's
point, we noticed these kids
creepy.
had strangely pale skin, but otherwise had normal childlike features, differing hair from one another and freckles and such. Thinking these were just children, Brian would lower his windows, and the older child would mention to him that he wanted to watch the new Mortal Kombat movie, but didn't have any money. So he asked if
Really?
the two could have a ride to their mom's house to get some money from her. Brian, of course, was parked right next to the movie theater, so he looked up to the list of showings only to see the final showing of this movie that night had started 45 minutes earlier. He was a bit
What?
creeped out by this and would point out to the kids that the movie was pretty much halfway done, and that after a
Wait, he's low-key smart. He's low-key smart to really like do that like in real time if that shit's actually happening. And he's like, wait, hold up, like the movie already started. Like, what the fuck going on?
Basically,
Little ass kids, go home, bruh.
came up with a new excuse that they wanted a ride home, and that Brian should give
Oh.
them a ride since it wasn't safe for them to walk home alone at night.
Hell
It
no.
was at this point when Brian
No,
was
I'm
looking
calling the
for any
police.
excuse in the book when one of the children would actually look at him
911.
and make eye contact, exposing their deep black eyes to him. Now, Brian, being a smart man, would take this opportunity to get the heck out of Dodge.
Well, yeah.
Running away as the children banged on his windows. As he
What?
left, something they said stood out to him. They would say, "We can't come in unless you tell us it's okay. Let us in." He would, of course, absolutely not let these little kids in.
No.
And after just a few seconds of driving, he'd look in his rearview mirror to see if they were chasing him. But instead it was clear. The children had vanished into thin air. This story, as I said, was the
Oh,
origin of the
shit.
black-eyed children mythology, but certainly not the last we'd hear of them, even in Texas. Heck, just a short
Wow.
while later, another sighting of these beings was reported in Texas.
Amarillo. That's like up
This one happening
Texas,
just a
like
short 4-hour drive
northwest,
away
I think.
from Abilene in Amarillo. Dang, your state is gigantic. Anyway,
Yeah.
this one tells a story by one.
Wait, how do you know what I
who
just
recounts
said?
her experience with the black-eyed children while visiting her
hell?
mother, and further cements the lore surrounding
This dude watching me, bro?
these
The fuck?
creatures. In this story, Deanna, as I said, was visiting her mom. As such, she was in her mother's house after her mom had gone to bed, and it was pretty late, but despite this, she heard knocking on the front door. She was a bit surprised and went to look, and would see that outside there were two teens, this time older, around 14 or 16 years of age, she'd estimated, standing outside. They, as you'd expect, would ask to enter. Their excuse was that they wanted to use the home's phone and were apparently left in the neighborhood by their parents.
What?
Deanna, being a good person, wanted to let them in.
No,
For some reason,
no.
she felt terrified by this prospect. And then she noticed the children's black eyes, and she slammed the door shut before calling.
Okay, but think about it though. Imagine some kids just doing this prank, putting those contacts in, you know, those black contacts in, and they just pranking people. Nah, that's on a different level of like.
Continued to knock harder and harder until suddenly, poof, the noises ceased, and shortly after, a different, more comforting knock would appear at her door. The police. And they saw nobody when they arrived, but they happily took her report. Deanna, it seemed, also had a run-in with these same sorts of creatures. So in conclusion, the legend of the black-eyed children is one that will continue to captivate and terrify many, including me, with multiple encounters shared by people all over the world, particularly in Texas though. From Brian Bethel's chilling first experience in Abilene to other unsettling stories like Deanna's encounter in Amarillo, these tales highlight the same eerie traits: the children's unnatural appearance, their persistent request for help, and the intense fear they provoke in those who encounter them. Whether you believe their existence or not, the black-eyed children have certainly left a lasting impression on modern folklore, and their stories continue to be shared as a warning to trust your instincts, especially when something feels deeply wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely scary, but like, I don't low-key I believe it, but I just want to think that's like there hasn't been any sightings that I know of,
Okay, guilty.
like recently,
Admission
I guess.
When I
But maybe they
go to
have.
America, I often think of roads.
But I'd love to go searching for them, I'm not gonna lie.
attractions, and judging from the interest I see in these locations in my videos, I don't think I'm alone. In Texas, just east of Groom, along Interstate 40, an interstate I used to drive east when I was going to college way back in the day in Tennessee, there's a water tower that if you were to look at it might make you say, holy moly, that thing's about to topple over. This tower today is referred to as the Leaning Tower of Britain, or the Leaning Tower of Texas. And while it may not be a world-renowned and cherished piece of culture like its older sibling in Pisa, it's still a place that many happily gaze upon. The life of this water tower actually began at some point in the 1900s that, frankly, I couldn't find an exact date for.
So this is just a water tower?
That seemed to be non-tabloid suggests that it was at one point a functional water tower that could actually hold water. This appears to have changed, however, by 1980 when the town of Groom purchased this water tower in an auction. Upon inspection, though, they'd find that the water tower didn't hold water anymore, or that at least it wasn't up to code. And you see, this is where the story gets weird. See, now, rather than having a new appliance on their hands, Groom had what was essentially a brick. I mean, what do you do with a water tower that can't hold water? Well, they apparently put it up for sale, and this strange thing being up for sale caught the eye of a local business owner, Ralph Britton, who owned the local tower fuel stop, and he would purchase it from Groom. For whatever reason, instead of painting Groom or Tower Fuel Stop on the side, he'd write Britain, USA on it, and he'd erect it at a 10-degree angle, looking as if it was about to fall onto his truck stop to draw attention to the business and to the location. Now, sadly, this truck stop wouldn't last forever. It would burn down sometime in the 1990s, so this confluence of tower and station didn't last too long. But Ralph's Leaning Tower remained standing, if only at an angle, drawing attention to it to this day. Now, I know this is a simple story, but I enjoy the novelty of a good roadside giant now and again, and I think their history is often a treat to hear about. Alright, on to dark and mysterious crap yet again.
Oh, let's go. God damn, we got another one. La Chaluza.
In the deep, shadowed corners of rural Texas and Mexico, the legend of La Lechuza haunts the night. La Lechuza is said to be a witch cursed to take the form of a gigantic...
Hey, if you ain't Hispanic... Oh, what the fuck? If you ain't Hispanic and you don't know this story, or I mean, if you are Hispanic and you don't know this story, shit, I don't know what... I don't know what I don't know what to tell you, man.
Reflecting the moonlight in a way that some stories portray as being hypnotic. La Lechuza, when she's not in her human form, still retains her human head in some stories. And yes, you heard that right. She has an owl's body but a human head, and a full head of hair even.
That shit is so creepy to me.
Clothing and skin
like, that shit is so uncanny and creepy.
Through the air. Stories claim that La Lechuza was once a woman who practiced white magic, but her community mistook her for a bruja, or a witch practicing black magic, and burnt her at the stake, an act that would make her spiteful, and she would return from beyond the grave to condemn her poor community, becoming a shapeshifter and creature of the night, forever destined to hunt those who were once her kin. Now, as for what La Lechuza actually does, the tales vary, but most attribute her with the quality of singing, crying, whispering, and whistling in the woods, leaving sounds to lure men, women, and children alike into the woods either out of passion or...
You ever hear the woods go silent, and you're there at the nighttime camping and shit? Oh boy, you cooked. I'm not gonna lie, boy, you cooked.
And of course, if you're one of these individuals, you're liable to become the witch's next snack. If she sees you've fallen for her traps, it's said she'll swoop down on you, grabbing you with the aforementioned sharp talons and dragging you off to her lair. She's also known to attack individuals driving on dark rural roads at night, and that late-night hikers best beware her wrath. Now, to be clear, there are ways to defend yourself from this witch, which sort of remind me of how you defend yourself against the boo hag of South Carolina. It's said that you can tie 7 knots in a rope and hang them by your front door, and that if this witch is trying to enter your house, that will stop her from entering your home. Also, if you're confronted outside of your home, it's said that the best weapon other than a traditional firearm, which apparently works, is salt or chili powder applied directly to her eyes. Also, the classic prayer to the Virgin Mary is said to do the trick, so to speak. Now, as for the origins of La Lechuza, it's thought that the story was some amalgamation of traditional Spanish and Mexican folklore that took root in the region, and that this lore combined with true large flying creatures known to these people. Owls, of course, but also possibly herons, cranes, and the Andean condor of South America. And that alongside superstition and maybe a bit of a guilty conscience regarding some women they accused of being witches, this gave birth to the story of La Lechuza. Now, you might say that this is all a bunch of shenanigans, that this is simply a wives' tale spun by people of old to keep kids inside late at night and convince people not to enter the forest. And you might be right. But you see, in 1975, in Robstown, Texas, Some stuff was going on that might make you think twice about the notion that this was all just a bunch of malarkey. As the story goes, it was the fall of 1960.
Yeah, I mean, like, you could choose to believe in it or not, but like, I just think it's just creepy. You know, it's just creepy. Like, who doesn't enjoy a good, like, creepy,
strange reports. Locals had apparently
creepy
seen
story?
a bird that had a man's face or maybe a woman's face and possibly the
Goddamn.
feet of a hare or
What?
maybe those of a dog. And it might have been somewhere in the realm of between 2 and 6 feet. Okay, I'll be honest, this is a pretty varying explanation at this point. But regardless, the confused and terrified locals of Robstown were seeing something, even if they weren't entirely sure of its description, and these sightings were largely comprised in the wooded areas near Bosquez Street and Rab Road in Robstown, where multiple calls a day were reported that this flying beast, as it was said, was dwelling. These reports were even reaching nearby towns too, and a man in Brownsville would even say a giant bird with the face of a bat and eyes of the size, I quote, silver dollars had swooped at him. Heck, the local TV stations even ran a segment on this apparent monster that was plaguing locals. Strangely, though, this all sort of came to a head in 1975 when this TV segment aired, and the sightings stopped entirely. That is until January of 1976, when apparently after taking a little holiday siesta, La Lechuza was back and was seen all over the Rio Grande Valley, being reported by members of the community and police officers alike. Heck, speaking of the police officers, 2 in San Benito even reported seeing a bird flying around with a 12-foot wingspan over a local lagoon.
What?
This sighting lent credibility to the reports, and there was even a $1,000 reward offered for the creature's capture. Grasping at straws, as I've mentioned, some thought that this may have been the large Andean condor, a giant bird from South America, but it's unclear how one of these could have made it to Texas. Then, funny enough, just like during the first rash of sightings, everything would come to a head when the Robstown police got a surprising call that led them to a tree on the police station property, where a gigantic dummy of a bird with a dummy of a woman's head stapled on was cleverly placed. It seemed the local had caught wind of the police sightings and wanted to poke a little bit of fun.
Nah, that's crazy.
After this, interestingly enough, from what I can tell, La Lechuza was never reported again in Robstown, but that doesn't mean folks don't still talk about it to this day. So with all of this in mind, especially the episode in Robstown, I can't help but wonder, was it really all just a hoax? Perhaps, but then again, there's something about the way the wind shifts in those old woods. Maybe it's just a trick of the light, or maybe there's something still lurking out there. Some say that after the little prank pulled by the kids in Robstown, the witch grew quiet. But legends like hers never truly disappear. They just take a break, waiting for the right moment to return. If I learned anything
that's the
while running
thing.
this channel, it's that there's no such thing as an ending for a story of a ghost or a creature. And who knows? Maybe on a moonlit
It's like
driving down the dark
it's like Jeepers Creepers. Like, you know, it always comes back.
A whisper in the trees, a faint cry in the wind, or a soft whistle cutting through the stillness. If you do, don't look up, whatever you do. Unless the seats in your car are a dark shade of brown, don't look up.
Don't mess with Texas, baby. Come on, bruh. What do we got here?
Okay, to be clear, I'm pretty sure y'all Texas natives know this one already. So this is probably more so for my viewers that are non-natives. Regardless, up, not in Texas, I heard "don't mess with Texas" an endless amount of times.
Yeah.
And hey, I don't blame them for sharing that slogan. It's pretty rad, very catchy. That being said, never in my wildest dreams growing up would I have realized that this catchy and intimidating slogan was not the slogan of a prestigious football team, or a saying in some epic struggle between 2 opposing militaries. No, rather it is a slogan for an anti-littering campaign coined by the Texas Department of Transportation that you'll see here and there dotting the roadways of the state. The history behind this phrase dates back to 1985, when the Texas Department of Transportation paid an advertising
I actually knew this
slogan for an anti-littering campaign. Specifically,
dude, that shit works so well.
18 to 35-year-old bubbas in pickup trucks who regularly littered beer cans and believed that littering was a God-given right. Seriously, don't shoot the messenger. This is a quote I'm reading. Apparently, this quote came when a representative for an advertising agency had a stroke of genius, leading to this phrase when he looked at some trash along the side of the road and recalled his mother telling him that his room was, I quote, messy. He quickly realized that mess sort of jived with him better than the word litter he was going to use, which he usually would have associated more so with litters of dogs, for instance. And the cool part about it, his phrase, "don't mess with Texas," worked really well. Like, really well. Since the campaign's introduction, litter went down 72% just from 1987 to 1990.
That's crazy.
Since then, of course, this phrase did go beyond the anti-littering campaign in due time. Nowadays, this phrase is a statement of Texas pride, and trust me, I've seen shirts with this slogan adorned upon many t-shirts at football games over the years, so it appears it is here to stay.
True. Oklahoma's panhandle? Wonder what this is gonna be about.
Okay. I know this is a video about Texas, but bear with me. It's sort of Texas's fault that Oklahoma has this so-called panhandle that we're going to talk about. So to start, if you don't know what OK's panhandle is, the Oklahoma panhandle is that weird little rectangle hanging off the northwest.
It looks like a cleaver.
Kind of like a forgotten puzzle piece nobody wanted. That's just an analogy, not an insult. It's about 166 miles of flat, windy plains where tumbleweeds outnumber people, and bovine are probably a dominant political party. Squished between Texas, New Mexico, Colorado, and Kansas, it's a place famous for farming, ranching, and surviving the Dust Bowl. Basically, it's where you go if you want to see what middle of nowhere actually looks like. Think of it as Oklahoma's awkward arm reaching out for a high five that sadly never comes. Again, I had a blast in Oklahoma, and I'm just poking some good fun, promise. Regarding who historically occupied this place, since way back in the day, we're talking like Paleo-Indian times, around 8450 BCE, people were first dwelling here, but it was in the 1800s that it got caught up in a game of political hot potato, first being part of New Spain, and then part of Mexico, and then the Republic of Texas, when Texas declared itself independent in 1836. But Texas has always had big ambitions, and when it joined the USA in 1845, it brought along its love of two things, barbecue and slavery. And here's where Texas ran into problems. The Missouri Compromise had already set a hard rule: no slavery north of 3630 latitude. Unfortunately, for Texas, the top part of its land claim stretched right past that line. Keeping it would mean having a chunk of Texas where slavery was banned, and that just wouldn't do. So in 1850, Texas shrugged and handed over everything above 3630 to the federal government, effectively cutting off its own panhandle. Meanwhile, Kansas got its southern border set at 37 degrees latitude, and this amalgamation of state borders left an orphaned 34-mile-wide strip of land with no state to call home. For the next 40 years, this so-called public land strip was a lawless, unclaimed frontier, also called no man's land. Here, squatters, outlaws, and people who really just didn't like taxes enjoyed a
That's crazy.
Where the only government was whatever you could get away with.
Nah, that's
Luckily,
crazy.
Though, or perhaps unluckily, depending on who you are, that Wild West status ended in 1890 when Congress finally decided to do something about this no man's land, folding the strip into the brand new Oklahoma Territory.
Beaver.
And when Oklahoma became a state in 1907, the Panhandle came along for the ride. That awkward, wind-blown rectangle nobody planned for, but now can't imagine the state without. So if you ever find yourself in the Oklahoma Panhandle, just remember, it's only there because Texas was too darn steadfast in its ways to have a bit of it be non-homogeneous.
That's crazy. I actually didn't really know that. Insane, bro. That's insane. I didn't know that.
Have you ever heard of lanite? No?
Lanite?
Well, pull up a chair, because this little rock's got a story. To put it simply, lanite is a rare type of igneous rock that's mostly blue quartz, potassium feldspar, a fancy way of saying sparkly pink stuff, and some biotite mica sprinkled in like seasoning. But if all that geology talk makes your eyes glaze over, here's all you really need to know. Lanite is named after Llano County, Texas, because that's the only place in the entire frickin' world that you can find it. That's right, Earth made one batch, then threw out the recipe. Now this unique chunk of rock comes from Llano County, in a region called the Llano Uplift, basically a place where the Earth got tired of being flat and decided to show off some of its oldest and weirdest rocks, like really old. We're talking Precambrian.
Dude, that's so old. Is that a town?
As for who discovered this rock, well, its history is kind of vague. No one left to know, but John P. Iddings, a geologist with a name fancy enough to match the rock, was the first to describe it in a 1904
Why do
paper
old
with a
school
title
geologists
so long
look
and
like cowboys?
complicated, you'd need a nap halfway through.
All these rocks are boring.
Yeah. But I thought for
exploring Texas weird folklore. So basically, these are just myths in Texas.
Appreciate me.
And I mean, I literally live in
It was
Texas, so
called
I had to watch
quartz
this.
feldspar porphyry.
How gold is made? That's actually that's crazy.
Liparose Alaskos from Llano, Texas. Yeah, that's the name of the paper. I just butchered that. And apparently he didn't believe in short titles. But here's the
Okay.
key. He didn't call it lanite. That honor went to Edward Hullen Sellards in 1931. Texas's state paleontologist and professional rock namer. He took one look
So
at
we're
that blue pink beauty and said,
So this whole video was literally about myths.
why do people care about this rock? Well, besides the fact that it's exclusive to Texas, like a secret barbecue recipe, lanite looks pretty awesome. It's got a blue or bluish-gray quartz crystals popping out of a reddish.
But why is this?
feldspar.
Why?
Basically,
Why does this matter though?
So naturally, folks like to cut it up and slap it on countertops, jewelry tiles, basically anything you want to make a little fancier. And excuse me now for just a quick nerd moment. Let me try to explain how this rock probably formed.
Okay,
And
let's
forgive
see.
me if I messed up this interpretation. I'm no geologist. First of all, a big old blob of magma pushed its way up under the Llano uplift, like a baked potato in the microwave. As it cooled way down under the Earth's crust, minerals began to crystallize, including the blue quartz and feldspar that make up lanite. But wait, why is the quartz blue? That's because of the tiny little rutile needles trapped inside. Think microscopic glitter, but from the Earth itself. There's still some debate on whether those needles got in there during the magma stage or later, thanks to hydrothermal fluid sneaking in and altering the rock, but either way, the result is Texas-exclusive eye candy.
That's crazy.
And if you're wondering why Llano County is so special, it's because it's been through millions of years of tectonic drama, like mountain building, collisions, and general geological chaos. All that action helped create and expose cool rocks like lanite. So if you want to see this cool rock for yourself, head out to the Lanite Dike, about 9 miles north of Llano on Texas 16, right near Babyhead Mountain. Yes, that's a real name. Texas doesn't mess around.
Babyhead Mountain.
Sticking right out of
What?
the ground like a secret treasure is where you'll find lanite in all its natural glory. In conclusion, lanite isn't just a pretty rock. It's a Texas original, a survivor
Okay,
of Earth's
so we have
history,
Texas has
and a
its own
reminder
rock.
that
That's
sometimes
pretty crazy.
The coolest things are hiding in plain sight. So next time you hear someone bragging about their granite countertops, you can one-up them and say, yeah, but have you ever heard of lanite countertops?
Interesting. Alright. Oh, UFO. We got some UFO action.
I'm about to tell you a banger of a UFO story. A story that frankly makes me scratch my chin and even sort of reminds me of that famous UFO case we covered in the Berkshires of Massachusetts a few months back. Most notably, this story makes me wonder, were cars actually breaking down, or were their owners reporting their cars were breaking down?
Okay, this
because
is interesting,
time was
though.
stopping around them, and they only stopped hearing their cars. Anyways, with my new conspiracy theory in head, let's talk about the Levelland UFO case. Over the course of November 2nd and 3rd in 1957, over a dozen reports came in across Levelland, Texas, a small town of just about 10,000 people in the South Plains of Texas. According to reports, residents were claiming they saw bright lights and an object in the sky that caused
I mean, I'm not gonna lie. If this is like your hometown, no shade to you. But, like, when there's no light pollution, you're bound to see something in the sky. Like, you literally are.
I think a car supposedly lost power, at least from the perspective of the observer in hand. This event is even considered by some ufologists as one of the most impressive cases in UFO history, given the relatively large number of witnesses involved over a short amount of time, and is largely, in the literature I'm reading, considered the most credible UFO sighting in Texas, though I'm sure many of y'all would dispute this. This case began on the night of November 2nd of 1957 at around 11 p.m. Farm workers, Pedro Saucedo and Joe Salz, would reach out to the Levelland Police Department to report a sighting of something strange in the sky that would influence the world around them. They said that they saw a bright, blue flash of light and an oblong-shaped object near the road they were driving on about 4 miles west of Levelland, causing the truck's engine to die. According to Saucedo, I jumped out of the truck and hit the dirt because I was afraid. I called out to Joe, but he didn't get out of the truck. The thing passed directly over my big truck, with a great sound and rush of wind. It sounded like thunder, and my truck rocked from the flash. I felt a lot of heat. The truck engine started again after the object passed overhead. Officer A.J. Fowler took the report, but thought it was a joke, of course, at first. Those
A.J.
boys in
Fowler.
blue always think we're lying when we tell them our UFO stories, don't they? Regardless, less than an hour away, another resident, Jim Wheeler, called to report a similarly shaped object that was blocking his path as he was driving on a road 4 miles east of Levelland. He said his car died. He got out of the car, and the object left. Then his car worked as usual afterwards. Sort of strange, but at this point it became a pattern that this craft in the sky, for whatever reason, could stop a car. But the thing is, the cars were starting up when it got further away. Question here. Cars usually require the turn of a key to start up after they've stalled out, don't they? This makes me think that if this story is real, perhaps it wasn't the car that was stopping. Maybe it was the time around the car instead. Later that night, another couple who had been driving northeast of Levelland called the Levelland Police Department to report that they too saw a bright light moving in the sky and that then their car headlights and radio died for
Dude, that's crazy.
I bet those police officers were wondering at this point if that practical
So,
joke they'd been told earlier was a joke after all.
maybe this is like some
This
electromagnetic
suspicion, I guess, would be
thing
confirmed
that's going on
later in
here.
the evening, as more individuals would hail the police department throughout the night to report sightings of bright lights and strange oblong or egg-shaped objects that caused their cars to die temporarily until the object flew away. All in all,
Electromagnetic.
the Levelland Police Department ended up
stuff.
receiving 15 calls regarding this UFO sighting in the area. Both the local sheriff, Ware Clem, and Fire Chief Ray Jones separately reported witnessing bright objects sometime around 1:30 a.m. as they were investigating the reports too. And remember, by the way, this is just the folks that decided to call the police. Just a fun statistic here, about 40 to 50% of crimes, not UFO sightings, crimes, are thought to be reported to the police in the USA when they're witnessed. In other words, in the case of actual crimes, you could expect at least double the amount of crimes were committed as opposed to the reports you received.
That's crazy.
Therefore, if this is real, I imagine far more individuals saw this light in the sky and experienced car trouble than actually ended up reporting it. Now, the publicity and number of sightings involved in this episode prompted the oh-so-famous Project Blue Book, the U.S. Air Force branch dedicated to investigating UFOs, to investigate the Levelland UFO case. The Project Blue Book investigator apparently spent 7 hours in Levelland, which frankly isn't that long, although they harp on it like it is a long time in the article I was referencing. And while they were there, they interviewed 3 of the witnesses, Saucedo, Wheeler, and Wright, which again, that isn't many witnesses when you consider 15 witnesses all in all. Along the way, they ended up learning that thunderstorms were present in the area earlier in the day, and the Project Blue Book investigator ended up concluding that a severe electrical storm, either ball lightning or St. Elmo's fire, was what caused the light and reported car failures. Also, FYI, I didn't know this, but St. Elmo's fire is a weather phenomenon where a blue or violet glow appears around a pointed object, like a ship's mast, or airplane wings, or perhaps church steeples, sometimes even people. And this occurs usually during thunderstorms. This is caused by the ionization of air when the electrical field around an object is super strong, but not
Just
quite
call me a
strong enough to
scientist,
cause a
bro.
lightning strike. Now, according to UFO historian Curtis Peebles, I quote, "The Air Force found only 3 persons who had witnessed the blue light, and there was no uniform description of the object. Other UFO skeptics agreed with the Project Blue Book explanation, and frankly, looking at photos of these phenomena, I can buy it to some degree, although I do find the car troubles folks were experiencing around this time extremely interesting and scarcely coincidental. Also, regarding thunderstorms, how do I put this? If only we had a reliable historical record of weather data online that we could easily reference and conclude that there was no storm. I wonder.
Wait, what? Really?
While many brushed off the Levelland UFO sightings as just another case of nothing unusual, ufologist James E. McDonald and J. Allen Hynek, which I see here a lot, weren't so quick to accept the Project Blue Book conclusions. They disputed the idea that an electrical storm caused the sightings, pointing out that there was no storm present when the events occurred, just like we saw in the Weather Underground historical weather data report I just showed you on screen. And I'll admit, this is actually pretty solid research from the UFO side. McDonald even testified before the U.S. House of Representatives in 1968, highlighting a famous case from Levelland, Texas, where 10 vehicles stalled within a short area over a 2-hour period with only a trace of rain, and no trace of thunderstorms or lightning strike accompanying these. Hynek, on the other hand, explained that, as the person responsible for tracking Sputnik, he'd been working non-stop and regretted hastily agreeing with the Air Force's ball lightning explanation based on the assumption of an electrical storm. He later admitted that upon reflection, he realized ball lightning couldn't stop cars or knock out headlights. Furthermore, some ufologists pointed out that the Air Force investigator had failed to interview 9 out of 15 witnesses, and those missing accounts weren't even included in the Blue Book final report. So what do I make of the Levelland UFO case? Well, at the very least, I guess we can say it's polarizing. Some say it was simply meteorological phenomena screwing with cars and causing people to see lights in the sky that weren't anything out of the ordinary, but looked sort of weird. As for my opinion, I think it's particularly interesting that cars were breaking down in conjunction with these lights strobing across the sky. And let's not forget the fact that Project Blue Book's investigation was a bit, half-hearted to say the least, with key witnesses left out and an assumption of a thunderstorm that didn't seem to check out.
Maybe they were like just trying to get something popular going on, because or like trying to make like a folk legend or folklore or something.
Regardless, whether you
but I don't know. I don't.
Alien encounter,
I don't
a freak
really.
weather event, or just a weird coincidence,
I think it's weather event.
UFO sightings remain one of the most compelling and mysterious events in UFO history, at least in America. As for me, I personally lean towards the unexplained angle because I really don't think the meteorological phenomena proposed to cause this event do a compelling job. Nor do I think we can just slap the UFO label on things willy-nilly.
Yeah.
Trust me, I want to believe. And in some cases, I'm genuinely blown away by the events I read, those reported by numerous or credible individuals. But spectacular claims require spectacular evidence, and I just don't see evidence that's compelling here from either side. Just a bit of hearsay that was followed up on later.
Alright, final one in this entry. Let's get it done. The Aurora, Texas UFO crash.
Driven through North Texas, you may have passed by a little town called Aurora. Founded in 1857, Aurora was supposed to be the next big thing. A booming farming town nestled in the rolling plains right in the path of Texas's westward expansion. They had high hopes, including plans for a railroad that would connect them to larger markets. Unfortunately, like many towns in Texas history, Aurora's dreams were cut short by the combination of a devastating boll weevil infestation,
Dang, what?
and, just to pile it on, a spotted fever epidemic that wiped out a good chunk of the population.
Wow.
By the late 1890s, the town was on life support, which makes what happened in April of 1897 all the more strange, and, depending on who you ask, maybe a little desperate. According to an article published in the Dallas Morning News, pinned by one S.E. Hayden, Aurora became the unlikely site of what might be the first recorded UFO crash in American history, decades before Roswell would ever become a household name, and even before human aircraft existed, making a human explanation extremely unlikely. The story goes like this. One morning in, I quote, airship, because people didn't call them flying saucers yet, just came barreling out of the side and crashed straight into a windmill on the property of Judge J.S. Proctor. Now, not only was Proctor's windmill completely destroyed, an inconvenience in itself, but inside the wreckage, locals reportedly found a small humanoid body described as not of this world. According to Army Signal Service Officer T.J. Weems, who apparently rushed over from Fort Worth to see what all the fuss was about, the creature was identified as a Martian, because obviously if something falls from the sky, it has to be from Mars.
Yeah, I mean...
needed. Rather than, say, preserve the body and craft for scientific study, or at least charge people 25 cents to gawk at it, as they did at the time, townsfolk did the next logical thing. They buried it in the local cemetery and tossed the wreckage into a nearby well. Problem solved, I guess. But the story doesn't stop there. Fast forward to 1935 when Brawley Oates, a local man, purchased the Proctor property. Wanting to use the well for water, because nothing says refreshing like Martian metal, he cleaned out the debris. Not long after, though, Oates reportedly developed a severe case of arthritis, which he blamed on the mysterious wreckage tampering with the water. To this day, some speculate whether his illness was from extraterrestrial contamination or just plain bad luck. After all, this had already been walloped by insects, disease, and bad weather. Today, if you visit Aurora, you'll find a Texas Historical Commission marker right by the cemetery detailing this whole saga, because even if it's nonsense, it's pretty good for tourism. Now, unsurprisingly, this story is controversial. I mean, you can't just claim you buried an alien and expect the UFO community to leave it alone. Over the years, MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network, and even shows like UFO Files that are oh so credible, have tried to get to the bottom of this mystery. During one investigation, MUFON claimed to have found elderly residents who remembered hearing stories of the crash, a sort of "my grandpappy told me" situation.
Bro.
Even more intriguing, they found a grave marker in the shape of a flying saucer. Naturally,
Okay.
MUFON wanted to dig it up, to check if there was really a tiny space traveler buried there. But the town said no.
Yeah.
Thinking, listen, we buried that problem hundreds of years ago. Don't go stirring it back up. In lieu of this, MUFON used metal detectors on the grave, and
I
to their
mean,
excitement,
to bury up something like that, I feel like it's already decomposed, bro. Like,
metal beneath. Though anyone familiar with coffins could point out that caskets often, if not usually, contain metal hinges, handles, and other parts, so this was hardly definitive proof of alien technology. But here's where things get suspicious, or perhaps really convenient, depending on your view. When MUFON came back, they claimed that the grave marker was gone, and no metal
What?
could be detected near the site anymore. Had someone or something cleaned up the evidence, or had the town, officially tired of people poking around their cemetery, just quietly removed the headstone? Of course, not everyone buys into the Aurora alien crash theory. One prominent skeptic was Etta Peggs, an Aurora resident who lived through the time of the supposed incident. She claimed that S.E. Hayden, the newspaper writer, made the whole thing up to attract attention to a dying town. Considering that towns in this era were making up stories about giant sea serpents, thunderbirds, and bat people, this
What?
explanation probably isn't too far-fetched. Adding more skepticism, UFO Hunters, another TV show, tried to actually excavate the well, hoping to find pieces of this alien ship. But what they found instead were parts of an old pump system, which experts later identified as being from after 1940, long
That's
after the
crazy.
supposed crash. Oh, and it wasn't even connected to a windmill, which means there may have never been a windmill on the Proctor property to crash into. So, with this in mind, what's the verdict? Was Aurora visited by a flying machine from another planet long before the Wright brothers ever took flight? Or was this just a clever 19th century PR stunt, the Victorian equivalent of Aliens in My Backyard?
yeah,
Anyway, the story
I
of
think it's
Aurora's
that.
UFO crash lives on. A blend of Texas folklore, sci-fi, and just enough mystery to keep people wondering. And if nothing else, it's a good reminder that even in the 1890s, people knew that a good alien story could put your town on the map. Literally.
Yeah. Dude, this was a good video. I'm not gonna lie. Dude, that was a really good video.
Texas, I had a heck of a time here with you.
Bro, me too, bro. That was the Exploring Texas, Weird Folklore, Myths, and Legends. That's actually a really good video. W video. Yeah.